are my top 10 favorite books of all time and why? I get asked this question a lot, and while it is so difficult to choose just 10, if I had to pick just 10, here are the books that I believe are the greatest literary creations of all time and why you should read them too. My name's Lisa, and you're watching Pens and Poison. So we are going to start off strong with one of my favorite books of all time. This is Anna Karenina by Leo Tolstoy. This is the book I always refer to whenever I have to explain to people why it's important to read literature. Anna Karenina is full of so many great universal moral messages from following the lives of particular characters. I always say the mark of great literature is the ability to comment on universals by way of particulars, and Tolstoy does an amazing job of this with Anna Karenina. I won't spoil too much, but I think most people know that Anna Karenina is the story of a woman who has an affair and it doesn't go so well for her. But I think what really moves me with Anna Karenina is not just Anna's story, but also Levin's story. So Levin is one of the side characters, and I think he's generally overlooked in favor of Anna's affair with Vronsky. It is through Levin that Tolstoy really makes his big morality commentary and really tells us what it's like to live the good life. Levin is this character who starts off as someone we would think of today as maybe a playboy, a party guy. Over the course of the novel, he's able to find virtue by turning to religion, turning to family, turning to stability, and through the character of Levin, Tolstoy is really able to tell us how to live a good life. And again, to me, that is the mark of great literature, telling us something about our own lives by observing the lives of other characters. By the way, I have the Peviar and Volokonsky translation here. Don't read this one. I actually read this in Russian, so I just ordered this copy just for this video, and I didn't realize this was the Peviar and Volokonsky translation. I don't like them. I won't go into why I don't like them in this video. I will probably make another video of why I don't like Peviar and Volokonsky. I have many issues with them, and their translations are not fantastic, but I did write an article on Substack of why the Peviar and Volokonsky Dostoevsky translations are not great. I'll link that somewhere in the description box below. If you can find another translation of Anna Karenina, I would do so over Peviar and Volokonsky, or better yet, just learn Russian. All right, up next we have Middlemarch by George Eliot. This one almost didn't make the cut, but I ended up throwing it on here because I think it gives a little bit of variety to the sorts of books I have on this list. It is one of my favorites. It's a great novel. I just think that if I weren't giving this list variety, it would just be like 5 or 6 books by Dostoevsky, so I had to give it some variety. So we're gonna put Middlemarch by George Eliot. So this is a novel about what we would call the Victorian woman question, but it's probably the only major novel written in the Victorian era that asks the woman question without hyperfixating on the question of marriage. George Eliot was very much ahead of her time in terms of addressing female liberation. You get this character named Dorothea who's in this marriage of convenience and obviously doesn't work out very well for her, but unlike a Jane Austen novel or maybe a Charlotte Bronte novel, Dorothea's central conflict is not, oh, should I get married again? Her central conflict is very much internal. So I think that it is a prime example of one of the most progressive books of its time in terms of, again, the woman question. It also follows a really cool doctor plot. I wrote an essay actually about Middlemarch's depiction of doctors on my Substack. I'll link it in the description box below. George Eliot was in this lifelong partnership with this man named George Henry Lewes, who was very much interested in the sciences. So she was exposed to a lot of medical discoveries that were going on in the Victorian era. And Middlemarch contains the first depiction in literature of what we would think of as the modern doctor. So it is really, really cool. A lot to learn about STEM in this book. Actually, for my AP biology class, we had to write a paper on a STEM related topic of our choice, and I chose to write about the medical discoveries in Middlemarch because that was technically a topic that you could write about. I actually think the teacher liked my essay. Check out Middlemarch, probably my favorite Victorian novel. All right, up next is not a novel, but a memoir. I really wanted to keep this list to novels, but I think memoir is very, very close, and I think this one reads very much like a novel. This is The World of Yesterday by Stefan Zweig. I don't know why Zweig isn't as widely read as he should be. He is truly a literary genius. He was very popular in his time and lost popularity, maybe because of the Jew thing, who knows? But I do think that this book is essential for any lover of arts and culture, and especially the Western tradition. In his memoir, Zweig depicts the Europe he grew up in and basically the decline of that Europe and the decline of an entire civilization as we headed into Nazi Germany territory. And you really do see in this memoir the beauty of Western civilization and the cost of its destruction. And what I specifically love about this really resonates with me as a Jewish person, is that Zweig really depicts a lot of the contributions that the Jewish people have made to Western civilization. You really see how integral the Jewish people were to the construction of what we would think of as the Western cultural tradition. So I think this book really depicts the importance of art and culture to the development of a free society. Zweig wrote it while he was in exile and ended up unfortunately committing suicide because he believed that the free Europe that he knew was no longer going to exist. These were kind of the early days of of World War II when it seemed as if maybe the Nazis were going to win the war. If only he had lived for another couple years. But I think that he's right in many ways. The Europe of Zweig's childhood no longer exists. It's very different today. Douglas Murray, in his book The Strange Death of Europe, actually opens his introduction by referring to Zweig's world. So in many ways, Zweig definitely had some sort of foresight into what was going to happen in today's world. This is the world of yesterday. Absolutely check it out. Coming in 7th place, this is Brideshead Revisited by Evelyn Waugh. I picked up this book because it's often cited as one of the earliest depictions of homosexuality in literature, and I was really interested in exploring how that tradition had developed in literature, and I was expecting this gay love story between two young lovers, and instead I got absolutely none of that, but a portrait of Catholicism and the decay of British nobility. Very different from what I was expecting from this book based on how it's just categorized online. So again, I think this is really an issue in terms of how we approach literature. There's never a discussion of Catholicism and Brideshead Revisited, even though that is the main theme of this freaking book. I was really expecting Evelyn Waugh, based on what I knew of this book, it's on every single kind of gay literature reading list, to be this sort of progressive intellectual, maybe in the vein of Jean-Paul Sartre, and he was actually the opposite of that. He was a very devout Catholic. He very much believed in kind of the aristocracy and the nobility, so very different book from what I was expecting. You can read this book without really being affected by the gay stuff. I kept waiting for it, but it's really not prominent. These two characters have just a very, very close male friendship. Whether it is homoerotic or not is up for debate, but I think even if it is kind of a homoerotic relationship, the point of that relationship is that the main character, Charles, and Sebastian, who, you know, he's supposedly being gay with, Charles later falls in love with Sebastian's sister because he looks like Sebastian. So there's a little bit of that, but the latter half of the novel is definitely more of an exploration of kind of the Catholic faith. So again, I wouldn't pick this book up if you want kind of a gay romance, because that is not it. Maybe read James Baldwin or something. And don't forget my favorite character, Alyosha's Sebastian's teddy bear. All right, up next we have The Unbearable Lightness of Being by Milan Kundera. In contrast to most of the books on this list, which I read in high school or early college, I read this book maybe 2 or 3 years ago. I don't know why I had never gotten around to reading it before that, but it quickly became one of my absolute favorites. So the book is probably most famous for its depiction of polyamory. Has a character who is very much a playboy and just wants to sleep around, and he's in this relationship with this woman named Teresa, who is maybe not super happy about that. They have a dog. The book is set against the Prague Spring, so there's a little bit of political commentary in here as well. But what I really love the most about this book is the way that it uses classical music, and especially Beethoven, to explore a lot of its themes. There's a big Beethoven motif that plays a really, really big role in this book, and there's some beautiful descriptions of the development of human relationships through musical metaphors. So as a classical music lover, this book absolutely blows it out of the water for me. So check out The Unbearable Lightness of Being. Next up is The Sun Also Rises by Ernest Hemingway. I've said elsewhere that I don't love Hemingway, and I think I have a love-hate relationship with Hemingway. What I don't love about Hemingway is his writing style. I'm not a fan of the minimalist thing. I think it has created a contemporary writing culture that is obsessed with literary minimalism, and that drives me absolutely nuts. And like it or not, that is Hemingway's fault. He started the whole thing where we don't use any big words and all of our sentences are 10 words long. Hemingway writes those sentences actually very well, but everyone today who's writing in his style can't write. That's another problem for another day. But I really do love this book for its depiction of human relationships, and specifically the lost generation of the 1920s. The book follows a group of expats who are living in Europe, as did Hemingway, and it really explores what it's like for a young person to feel lost in the world. So I think it is so relevant today, and I think really, really crucial to read if you're kind of between the ages of 18 to 22. I really think this book resonates, and there are some cool bullfights in here. All right, next we have The Master and Margarita by Mikhail Bulgakov. This was actually the first book I ever read fully in Russian when I was 15. I was very proud of myself, and it really kickstarted my love of Russian literature. As you guys can see, this is a new copy that I ordered again for this video because I read it originally in Russian. The book is fundamentally a critique of Soviet society, but it also explores themes of religion, the character of Pontius Pilate, and the devil who comes to Moscow with a cat. I really resonate deeply with the novel's commentary on the decaying norms of kind of Soviet society, and its commentary on kind of the eradication of religion under the Soviet regime, which was obviously a big theme back then and is still relevant to us in so many ways. And I think this book is also just really, really fun. It has a little bit of magical realism. This was one of the books that inspired J.K. Rowling to write the Harry Potter series, so don't forget to check this one out. Okay, we have just a couple left now. Next up is Pale Fire by Vladimir Nabokov. So I debated between putting Pale Fire or putting Lolita on this list. I think at the end of the day, I am more partial to Pale Fire. I think Pale Fire moved me in a way that Lolita didn't move me. Maybe I need to go back and reread Lolita. I have it over here. Obviously, Lolita is fantastic, and I think Lolita obviously obviously gets a bad rep for various reasons, but I do think it's still absolutely worth reading. But what I love more about Pale Fire is, first of all, I just love the structure. The structure is a little bit experimental. So it starts off with a foreword to a poem, and then the rest of the book is commentary on the first professor's poem. But you quickly start to realize that something's a little bit off in his commentary. So I think it's just a really, really cool idea. I don't think anyone's ever done something like this before. And as someone who always complains about the ills of literary criticism in the Academy, I think Nabokov was very much onto something in this book. It's such a fun read. A lot of people have said that the poem is a little bit corny or gimmicky. I actually really love the poem as a standalone piece of art. I think Nabokov could have been a poet in another life. And of course, Nabokov's favorite hobby of lepidoptery features prominently in this book. So absolutely love this one. It also inspired my most recent novel, Blue Snow, in its exploration of the thin line between fantasy and reality. Taking second place, this is The Sound and the Fury by William Faulkner. I almost put this in first place. I always say that this is my favorite novel of all time, but I actually really thought about it and I decided to put another novel in first place, which I will talk about in a second for various reasons. So this is not my second favorite novel of all time. This is an experimental modernist novel. It is a little bit difficult to read, fair warning. So I think because of that, not a lot of people read it. The first 80 pages or so are just very, very strange. It takes a while to kind of figure out what's going on, to get used to it. Faulkner wrote famously in this stream of consciousness style. The novel follows the decline of a Southern family, told through the point of view of 4 different characters. My favorite section is the second section, told by a character named Quentin Compson, who's the first child in his family who gets to go to Harvard, and things don't go so well for him up there. He has a lot of issues, but I think that Faulkner understands psychology like no other American author. There is only one author in the whole world who I think understands psychology better than Faulkner, and that is our friend Fyodor Dostoevsky, who takes the #1 spot for my favorite book of all time. This is The Brothers Karamazov. This is the deepest novel ever written. That's not just my opinion. I think that that is an objectively true fact. The novel follows a murder trial, but that's maybe just the frame story that Dostoevsky uses to explore very deep questions about religion, about psychology, about what it means to be human, and again, what it means to live the good life. There are 3 brothers, Alyosha, Dmitry, and Ivan. Alyosha's kind of this holy fool character who's a little bit naive about everything. Dmitry's the oldest one. He's going through relationship drama. And then there's Ivan, the middle brother, who is kind of this big skeptic and cynic and who delivers one of the most famous passages in literature of all time, the Grand Inquisitor passage, which is almost like a story within a story that explores the nature of religion. It is the greatest literary accomplishment that this planet has ever known, hands down. This is the Constance Garnett translation. By the way, this is the translation that I always recommend. I know a lot of people don't like Garnett because she anglicizes certain things. She does take some liberties, but in terms of readability, this is the most readable translation. And what I like about Garnett is she really captures the spirit of the time. I think a lot of other translators tend to over-modernize Garnett. She writes in maybe this kind of like Victorian style, so you at least get the feel of the times, versus if you read one of the more modern translations like Michael Arkat's, you almost feel like you're reading a 21st century novel. And again, don't get me started on Peviar and Velikonski. So I like Garnett because she preserves a lot of the spirit of Dostoevsky. This is the best book ever written. If there's one book you have to read before you die, it is The Brothers Karamazov. Wow, was it difficult to make that list. There are obviously so many other books that I love and enjoy, but they're my top 10. I'd love to know in the comments, do you guys agree? Have you read these books? And what are your top 10 favorite books of all time? Maybe there are some that I haven't read that I'd love to check out. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. And if you want more Pens and Poison, you can follow me over on Instagram and check out my Substack, Pens and Poison, where I write about a lot of these topics in depth. I'm going to link some of the articles I referenced in today's video in the description box below. And don't forget to check out The Brothers Karamazov as soon as you can, and I'll see you guys in the next video.